All right. Sorry that I'm late, everyone. Everything was just going around today. I was actually like, okay, I'm going to get to this spot on time, even early, just to make sure that, things are straight. But then I couldn't find my keys, and I lost the cap to my highlighter. It was just a lot. But anyway, we're going to keep it pushing for all of y'all who are tuning in. And for those of y'all who are just going to watch post stream, my name is Denzel, if you don't already know. And what I'm going to be doing today is continuing a series that I've been doing each week on the facets of each function. Now, the analogy that I pretty much stuck to when it comes to describing functions is that of an emerald. So, emeralds, as you probably already know, are any type of crystal. They have several different faces or facets to them. But we don't call the face of an emerald the emerald. We call the whole item the emerald. And so, in the same sense, Jamila. So, in the same sense, a a function pretty much is an emerald that has several different facets to it, and the more skill that you have in that function, then the more of these facets that you're going to unlock. So there are people who use the functions in a average way, which again is not bad. Average slash basic just means like, they have a regular use of the function. Some of them might even be just talented with it, and then there's skill that's being used with the function. So what I like to pretty much say is kind of like Violet from The Incredibles. She naturally knew how to, she was born being able to like create force fields. But then it wasn't until like maybe with some more practice and everything that she intentionally learned to expand her skill set, which is what I as a coach try to help people do with their function sets. So, in a sense, I'm going to be explaining the different facets of introverted thinking TI today, also nicknamed by Personality Hacker as FI, as accuracy. And I'll just go ahead and say right now, just because somebody might have TI does not mean that they're always accurate, and Personality Hacker would say it themselves. It's more about the drive to find accuracy. So, without further ado, we're going to hop into this live here, and I'm just going to define introverted thinking based on my own terms, and we're going to go through the facets of introverted thinking slash TI. And then after that, I'm going to be taking y'all's questions on introverted thinking slash TI. So, introverted thinking, defined by me, is concerned with understanding how things work, logical consistency, and accuracy. People with this function as a strength take in a plethora of information and extract biases and emotions as much as possible to get the raw data and examine it. Loves to pick things apart to their simplest forms to fully grasp the mechanics of an idea. Principle or to fully grasp the mechanics of an idea, principle, or object in the most objective manner and be capable of applying that information elsewhere whilst continuing to keep the other information stored pure and consistent. They rely most on their internal way of understanding and framework more than others and often have airtight opinions on matters, even if not entirely accurate. People who use this function as a strength can often appear cold and detached. So, now let's go through the different facets of introverted thinking slash TI. First and foremost, introverted thinking is most concerned with logical consistency. What I mean by that is that I like to think of Jenga. When you see like Jenga towers, for example, and like how they're like very intricately built, Like that's the pretty much like what introverted thinking has. Like it's using a whole bunch of logic, and it's trying to make sure like it's very tapped into, okay, this is consistent, this is consistent. Like they pretty much build a framework of whatever their opinion might be and all of their reasoning, and then they try to make sure that nothing is contradicting each other. So they're trying to keep everything completely in line. So that's essentially, like how I view introverted thinking to an extent. And well, at least when it comes to like the logical consistency. And that's why it's pretty much seen as like accuracy. But again, it's not necessarily always accurate, because you can have someone who builds a really, really airtight argument that does not contradict itself and can pretty much hold itself up, but that doesn't mean that it's right. It just means that you can't pick it apart. And just because you can't pick something apart because it's so airtight, once again, does not mean that it's right. So, but it is like it's very concerned with that logical consistency, both in themselves and in other people. So TI users are usually the ones who will be able to be like, well, there's a flaw in your logic here because you said this, but then that contradicts with this information that you said over here, or like this contradicts with the information that I know in this way. So how do I reconcile this? Like they want that clean data all the time. Another facet of introverted thinking is personal opinions aside from the tribe/society. So the flip side coin of introverted thinking is extroverted feeling, which I already did a live stream on that about 3 weeks ago. Y'all can go check that out after this. But introverted thinking and extroverted feeling always come together. And if extroverted feeling is most concerned with, okay, let's all be on the same page. What does everybody think? Let's have these shared values, etc. Introverted thinking doesn't really care if they share the same opinion as other people. If anything, they're like, well, let me figure this out for myself. These are the people who are like, okay, I know that the church is saying this, and there's people, usually hire like FE users or something like that for that matter, who buy whatever, the church is telling them, and stuff like that. It's not to say the church is wrong, but I just need to dig into all of this and figure it out myself. I don't want to be too trusting of what information that I'm getting, not because I have any offense toward the people that are giving me the information, but I have this desire to know things for myself and to make sure, once again, logical consistency, that's going to come down with everything for introverted thinking, that it makes logical, consistent sense. So no matter what everybody around me might think, I need to be able to think for myself and to come to my own conclusions on my own. And I have to do it in the most logical manner that I could possibly think of, extracting all biases that could pollute the data, because of course nobody can totally be unbiased, but TI users, especially like higher up, they try to often be as unbiased as they can so they can just get to the simple, accurate answer, void of whatever else might be coming into play. For this reason, another facet of TI is often critique of societal norms and interpersonal engagement. So I've profiled a lot of people, and a lot of them happen to be TI users. And TI users, especially INTPs, ISTPs, they have it as a dominant function, and then ENTPs and ESTPs have it as an auxiliary function. And then INFJs, ISFJs have it as a tertiary, and ENFJs and ESFJs have it as an inferior function. The higher stacked TI users are always like criticizing society, pretty much in a way. Like, wow, like, yeah, and people just believe this, but they haven't even vetted this information in this way. And like, people just believe that, and and they're looking at relationships in a way. And I literally saw, I profiled an ISTP who pretty much said that something that's very obvious to them is that they can look at how flawed a whole bunch of people's relationships are and things of that nature, and like seeing like how that's like superficial over here, and like they just built this relationship off of this, and like picking apart interpersonal dynamics in that way. But then what they were very blind to was how to actually engage interpersonal dynamics. And so TI is the framework that FE is working underneath. And that's why, it's really good to have both the FE and TI really develop when you have those together, because then you can have a really good, logical, consistent framework that actually makes sense. And then you can also have like a really well-defined and well-oiled society. So without TI, then we wouldn't have societal norms that actually make sense. So TI is always like critiquing in that way. This is where you'll find a lot of like comedians a lot of times, because they are looking at society and then they're pretty much poking fun at the way that humans interact with each other and how we do certain things, and pretty much social norms. And they're poking fun at it because TI is about absurdity. It's seeing the absurdity in humanity and human beings in that way. So that's another way that they're able, that's another facet of it. Another facet of TI is also its focus on how parts come together and are taken apart. So when you especially see, it's not limited to STPs, but you'll see this more with STPs than you might with NTPs. STPs, they're usually they're the types of children, like when I profile them, like, when they were younger, they're like taking apart doorknobs just randomly, and they're figuring out how to put the doorknobs back together. They're taking apart their computers later on. And once again, you can see this even like with INTPs. Like they just like to know what goes into what and how does everything work. And you can see how they not only know how to take things apart, physically, and that's how you get the ISTP mechanics and stuff like that. Or even people like who are basketball players and they figure out like how each bone is working and stuff like that. And they know how to like shoot better, things like that. But then you'll also get, people who are focused more on pretty much like debate and like constructing arguments and constructing like airtight, like what fallacies are, like what creates like an airtight opinion of some sort. So that's why they're really good at being able to pick apart. Like if we're playing Jenga, then the lower stack your TI might be, then the harder it would be for you to be able to pick apart the Jenga pieces of somebody else's logic. You will still probably notice that, okay, no, this tower of logic is, there's something really off about it. But either, even if you know how to pick it apart, you won't have the energy to a lot of times, and it won't be fun for you, or you just may not simply know how to. Some people might not even like notice it. But like the higher stack that your TI is, and the easier you'll be able to spot like something's wrong with this Jenga tower, which is metaphor for like the thoughts that you have, your framework, like your logic that you have in your mind, your syllogism, for lack of better terms. And then the higher stack your TI is, then the better you're able to also like pull apart. Well, this doesn't belong here. This doesn't belong here. This doesn't belong here. This is kind of inconsistent. This is flawed, and kind of reassembling it in that way. Another facet of TI is principles. So TI is like very focused, once again, on like the principles that we should abide by in society. And this is where a lot of times you get people where you get a lot of like, the social norms, So this is, I'm trying to find a way to like how to distinguish it from values. But essentially the best that I could say is that like values are coming. So values, I would personally attribute that more with a feeling function and mainly FI. Like this is coming from an internal place, and it's coming from like my morals and like, something that's almost like emotionally attached. Whereas like principles are kind of not really focused on like morals in that way, or like emotion especially, but it's more of like, these are like standard, like it's just like, I have this principle that with whom much is given, much is required. And or another principle is like, if you've been given the ability to help someone, then just do so. So then somebody who's going by that principle, it's kind of like void of emotion or whatnot. It's just kind of like it's almost like a robotic thing. It's like, no, this is just what I do. And that's why, You can see the TIFE polarity sometimes, like higher stack TI users, they'll do like a lot of kind things, but to them it's like, no, it just made sense. Like, it was raining, I had an extra umbrella and I gave it to you. End of story. I didn't really do it because it was like this emotional value of mine and I wanted to feel good or anything. Like, no, like if I have the ability to be able to help and it just makes sense to help, I'm just going to help. That's pretty much what it is. So another facet of TI, introverted thinking, is also critical thinking and intellectual honesty. This is a big one because when TI is being used really well, then it's being honest, not only with other people, but with also themselves. So once again, they're trying to get rid of biases, and they're trying to really dig into like, okay, even if this is against what everybody else in society thinks, what do I think, and I have to be honest with myself. Like, is this, like, am I really just trying to cling to a paradigm of mine? Or should I challenge it? Should I attack it? Even if this might risk destroying my whole Jenga tower, I need to know what the truth is. And that's why TI is nicknamed accuracy, because it's like, even if, as I strive toward accuracy, I might hurt other people's feelings, or I might hurt my own feelings, whatever. I'm just striving so much just so I can know the truth. So that TI is like truth seeking like crazy, because it just really wants to know the truth in that way. And that means that they're going to be honest. That means that they're going to honest in the sense of like, and if it's well developed, that doesn't mean that every high stack TI user. In fact, I heard from a very, very highly well-known developed TI user, ENTP, that very rarely does she see TI being used on an extremely like high level, and being used well, even from TI DOMs, because it's one of those functions that's like, you actually have to put in like a lot of work, to be able to really build and develop skill there. And she is an ENTP, like she's worked really hard on trying to do that. She still continues to. But yeah, when you do that, then you're pretty much even learning how to like steel man, which is essentially like the opposite of straw manning. So a straw man fallacy is pretty much like when you weaken somebody's argument just so that you can go ahead and attack it, And usually that's kind of done as like a dick move, because you just want to like wince, like, oh, so what you're telling me is that when iPhones come out, then I don't know. I can't even think of something like on the spot. But y'all have all seen somebody who's strawmans. Like, they intentionally, or sometimes even unintentionally, will take whatever argument that you have, and just so they can win, they'll ridicule it and poke holes in it. That is like, that'll have you being like, well, that's not what I said. And they might even know like that's not what you said, but for the sake of them winning, then they will just continue to, you know what I mean. But when it comes to TI using intellectual honesty, pretty much, then in a way they are focused like, okay, so I'm not focused on beating you in this argument. If anything, I'm going to steel man your argument. Like, okay, so are you trying to say this? And they might even help develop your argument even better, so they can be like, okay, now that I understand you, let's start picking this Jenga thing apart. It's not to help you, it's not to make you lose face or anything, but if we're both here trying to seek truth, then let's go about this in a, very rational and honest manner. And it's not about winning, it's about us, but we both win if we both found the truth. That is intellectual honesty. Actually, yeah, I made a video on this, I believe. Yeah, I think I put out a video on this, like intellectual honesty and just being open to being wrong. And as long as you guys are both looking for truth, that is very well developed TI. And you can see the FE pepper in there too, like in the way that it's going about things. But if the TI is like really sloppy, these are the people who are like, well, I'm better at my logic than you are, and I can pick apart anybody's argument. And so you're just always going to be wrong because you can't beat me in the argument. You can't pick apart my syllogism, etc., etc. I can throw all of the fallacies at you. And once again, just because an argument even has a fallacy in it does not mean that it's wrong. It just means that you have to check that fallacy to make sure, like the less fallacies that it has, then the more consistent and the more of a chance that it could have of being right. So there's that. Another facet of TI is that it's often pedantic. So TI is it's pretty much all about like categorization. And so it's looking at, like, if FI is very focused on the very specific like values and emotions that a human might have and experience, then TI and FI is like focused on like expressing in that way. TI is focused on articulation. So it's not really like, it's like articulation is still a form of expression, but it's coming from a very verbose standpoint as opposed to like expressing, which is like, it's more about like what you feel and bringing that out in a way, and so in that, TI can be very focused on trying to find the most poignant word to use, because it's like, yeah, no, there's just a specific word that I'm really looking for to use in this situation. And a lot of times you'll see that if a TI user can't like find out like the specific word that they're using, that they want to use, then it could frustrate them at times. And they're always trying to focus on the specific word that you are using, so they can know that, okay, are we on the same page? Like, are we both defining the word like, correctly? Have we defined our terms? That way, like, this is not a waste of time. So they can get very pedantic, like, okay, sorry, when you said, like even when you said like FI, I was thinking of socionics FI. So let's redefine like what this is over here. Okay, when in fact there was something just recently. It was a really good example of a word that I was like, okay, when you use this word, I thought you meant this. And then Jamila's like, no, like I meant this. And I'm like, okay, see, I wouldn't use that word. Oh, actually, no. Yeah, I'm not even gonna use that example, but y'all get the point. TI can be like pretty pedantic, and that's why sometimes it can come off as annoying. But usually, it's trying to like be done in good faith, so they can like make sure they understand you correctly. And then last but not least, TI is another facet of TI is refining. So this could be refining arguments and logic with NE, or actions and body movement when paired with SE. So TI is like always trying to like refine, like if it's like sharpening like a sword of some sort, and trying to just make their logic sharper, trying to sharpen their arguments, trying to sharpen their ability to shoot a basketball, or to dribble a basketball, whatever it might be. Like TI has this like, again, like accuracy focus. Like, I want to be able to do this in the most accurate way that I possibly can. And that essentially wraps up the facets that I have for y'all today on introverted thinking / TI. Let me check out the chat. Howdy, curious. How can you tell when you're using TI or FI? Okay, so hopefully I've answered a little bit of this in the chat or in the facets, but essentially what I would say is that look at the polarity. So TI is always coming with FE, right? And FI is always coming with TE. I have a video on the polarities, by the way, so you can go and check that out. Like, I have a video explaining like, how TI and FE work together, and then how FI and TE work together. But to give you a general basis, FI is way more in tune with its own feelings. and its own values, and it's always asking like, how does this make me feel, how does that make me feel, and they're always trying to observe, like who they are, like all of the different motivations of theirs. Whereas TI is way more concerned with all of their thoughts. Like, okay, what do I believe? What do I not believe? What do I think about this? What is my opinion on this? Why is that my opinion? Is that accurate? And it's a lot more detached and removed from emotions, and it's more focused on just like accuracy, articulation, things of that nature. True story. I asked way too many questions to be a Baptist. Yeah, yeah. I think that high stacked TI users, they can always go one way or the other. Like for example, Ravi Zacharias, the late Ravi Zacharias, who, you know, for those of you who know him, he was an apologist, and he died about 2 years ago, and some scandals, pretty serious scandals, came out about him, unfortunately. But I believe that he was an ISTP, and I think that it was because of his skepticism that he was able to find such great answers to defend the Christian faith. So it could always go one way or the other. Like you're asking so many questions. So then when you find these answers, then you're the one who's able to help people to understand, like, okay, in that case, this is, in that case, like this is how we're going to approach this, and like this is the answer to that, or here's a reason for that. Maybe not even necessarily the answer, but an answer to that, because once again, we just building Jenga towers. It doesn't mean that is the tower, but it's an explanation that makes sense and is logically consistent, that if you want to have it, then you can adopt it. But yeah, a lot of people, they usually just don't question stuff like that, so they just accept it, and it's kind of like just faith. And I feel like high stack TI users, especially, have a very hard time with that. They really need to be able to make sense of stuff, and that's why they get into theology and all of these different things in that sense. Rare to see TI used well in public because it tends to be punished. You got to be a Jedi with it just to get by. Yeah. And I think that's why I feel like, and this is just coming, I know it's coming from the FE Dom, but I mean, hey, if I'm an FE Dom, then I think that I know what works in public. So I think the best way to become a TI Jedi is to develop that FE, man. Like, people do not care what you think, or people do not care what you think until they know that you care, And so if you make it clear that, hey, my intention is not to offend you, like, how people say, like, hey, no offense. I think that essentially that's like, people are like, oh, people say no offense right before they offend you. But to me, I don't see it that way. To me, I see it as like, no, unfortunately, I don't speak Arabic, by the way. I was just like, I'm going to have to let them know when I get to that. But yeah, when it comes to TI in that sense, it has to gauge its audience, for example. And it has to be able to see, like, okay, like the no offense thing, that's where I was at. Sorry. Somebody posted Arabic in there. I was like, oh, I wonder if there's a translate button, because I don't. But anyway, the no offense thing. So if somebody says, like, hey, no offense, but I personally won't allow it to offend me, because what I'm understanding from them is that, hey, I'm going to say something that might come off wrong, and I don't know a better way to deliver it, that I'm going to try to deliver this information the best that I can, but it still might, rub you wrong. Just know that my intention is not to rub you wrong, which to me changes things. Like if you are intending to rub me wrong, then I'm probably going to be offended. But if you're not intending to rub me wrong, but you're trying to just give me some information, and there's just not really a nice way to be able to say like, hey, that outfit doesn't look good on you, man. Maybe you should get another outfit. Then I'm gonna accept that. Like if you're not really actually trying to make fun of me or whatever, then yeah. So I think that TI, when used well in public, it's still being honest, but it's showing its intent and its care. A real TI Jedi that's able to use their TI in public is one who understands FE, and that, hey, I can share as much TI as I like as long as I'm delivering it. I'm allowing my delivery to be as kind and sincere and whatever as possible, so that if anybody is offended, it's only the information that might offend them, but it's not the delivery. You can only control the delivery, but you can't control the information. And that's just pretty much like what it is. So yeah, I think that's like the real secret to being a TI Jedi. I might tweet about that. How do TI users experience insecurities? TI seems so confident in their ability to make things sensible and aren't afraid to say they don't know something. That's a really great question, Katie. So I think that, especially with some INTPs, like I have an INTP interview on my channel. Uh, if you search it, it's with Brandon Kameen. His last name is Kamin. So if you search INTP Brandon on YouTube, then it might show up. And essentially, like he's an example of an INTP who, in my opinion, like he's he's like, I think that he's a good example of like those TI users who are like, I mean, I feel like this is right, but let me just make sure. Like they're always trying to make sure, like, okay, is this really accurate? And sometimes, even though, like, because they're, especially if they know that it, like, they have good reasoning, and like, okay, this seems like a pretty good Jenga tower, they know that it still might not be the answer. So the best that they can do is just give you reasoning, but they can't make it clear to you that it's empirical. They can just give you reasoning and arguments, but they can't promise you that, oh, this is an empirical reasoning, stuff of that nature. So a lot of times, if they seem like overly confident in that way, they've either thought really, really, really deeply about it, or they so they've either thought really, really deeply about it to where it's like, okay, I've looked at this from every angle, and I've gotten a lot of information in that way, and this is why I can argue this. Kind of like, how I guess I can be with type, like, and with me, like being like TI inferior, especially, I don't want to speak for all ENFJs, but a pattern that I've seen is that like we'll become extremely knowledgeable about like 2 to 3 max like things. And then everything outside of that is like, I don't know. So type is one of those like 2 to 3 things for me that, like, it's not to say that I know everything about typology. But if you present certain things to me, like I can speak with confidence because of my, studies and my observations and all of that. But even then I'm like, but who knows? Maybe Jennifer Lawrence isn't an ENFP. Like, still, bring me whatever you think. I can just give you my reasoning as to behind why I firmly believe this. But once again, just like what we were talking about, like with intellectual honesty, a real good TI user will always be open to hearing your argument because they're way more concerned with finding the truth and what's accurate than than trying to beat you in the argument. How does TE approach reality versus TI? Oh, very great question. TE is way more about reality than TI, which is how introverted versus extroverted functions usually are. So TI is pretty much all theoretical, like E equals MC squared, blah, blah. I don't even know what 100% that means, but I'm pretty sure it's like TI because it's like it's abstract, like it's these principles and these things that we just kind of like go by so that we can all have like some kind of like understanding or mathematics, you know what I mean? Whereas like TE is like, no, you can observe this, we can put it into action, we can try it, we can do this, we can like apply it in a way that's going to get us results. TI is not focused on results. It's just focused on trying to understand something and slash or make reasons for something. But if you ask TI to prove it, then the best that usually TI users can do is get out a whiteboard and start writing some stuff down. But even then, that's still theoretical. So TE is like if you're saying like, oh, prove that that if you that gravity is out there. TE is literally like, okay, there. Like it's gonna prove to you something. Whereas like TI is like, well, I mean, I just have the data here and this, that, and these are just the reasoning and the argument, and this is the Jenga tower that I've built. So everything can still be like up in the air, but at the end of the day, uh, it's just a really tight, like airtight argument. I hope that makes sense. I'm having trouble asking questions to better understand TI. It seems so simple and complex at the same time. Yeah. Yeah, let me see. Oh, you just asked another question. Maybe this might help. Would you say there's a component of TI where they are looking for a single framework to make sense of everything? Yes. Or are they looking for a framework for every individual thing? Okay, that's a great question. TI TI is looking for a framework for everything. But if it's with NI, then it's usually looking for a framework like it's looking for a framework to make sense of everything and then dive into those things. Whereas like TI in and of itself is trying to understand like each individual thing for what it is and like have like that's why it's like all about these like little subcategories. Like so when you're really like TIing, then you're just going deeper and deeper and deeper and like just abstracting in a way, and adding like a more and more and more information. Like when we say things like TMI, like it's just like way too much information. That is like the TI. Like if you've seen the show or the movie Don't Look Up, then Leonardo DiCaprio's character on there, he's an INTP, and he was surrounded with like TE users. So Jennifer Lawrence's character on there, I think she was an ISTJ. I forgot what I ended up like typing there. I wrote it on my phone, but I don't feel like looking it up. Either way, she definitely had TE. And then the other man on there, the one who pretty much simplified whatever Leonardo DiCaprio's character was saying to the president and everything, he was also TE. So they're just really good at like just once again like giving you like this is just what it is, boom, boom, boom. This is what's important. Whereas like TI, so like Leonardo DiCaprio's character was like, yeah, and he was just trying to like give this whole explanation of every small little detail and all that, which could then bring in more this way and then more that way and more this way, and they could do that with several different things. Whereas like TE is like, hey, just give me the bullet points, like give me the bullet points. But TI is like, okay, I can give you bullet points, and then I can give you a whole bunch of subheadings for those bullet points, and I can give you even more for each of those, and I can just keep on giving you more and more and more information. That's why they're like the stereotypical like trivia type of people who just know everything from like Jeopardy, for example. So yeah, I hope that helps. I doubt many TI users could self-report some kind of framework we're carrying around in our heads. That part of the literature seems overemphasized to me. Okay, let me reread. I doubt many TI users could self-report some kind of framework we're carrying around. Oh, yeah. Maybe. If I'm understanding you correctly, like maybe. I think that those that are like really like thinking about it though, they could, because you're pretty much just asking them like, okay, what do you think of this? And what's your reasoning for it? It's like, well, this is my framework of my understanding of this. Um, and that's why. So I think that's usually like how TI is coming forth in that sense. Uh, yeah. Yeah. Anyways, hopefully this has been very helpful to y'all. Let me just make sure. It sounds like trying to explain the domino effect of things, how one thing affects the others in a cause and effect manner. Yeah, and see that's the interesting thing, because domino effect can be applied to so many different functions. Like FE. It's like, okay, the domino effect when it comes for FE is, okay, this person made this person sad, which then made this person angry because that was their son. And so now that person's about to go make this person sad by scolding that person for getting their son angry. That was the domino effect over there. But then TE could be the whole like, okay, well, that caused this to fall, which then caused that to happen. And or the stock market, went down over here, and then that caused this person to lose money over there, and then because they lost money, they weren't able to invest over here, so then boom, boom, boom. So then there's that, and then FI is like, okay, well, since I felt this type of way, then that must, so there's a domino effect for everything. Even NI is like, okay, if I understand that, this might happen over here, then that means that might happen that way. You get the point. But yeah, when it comes to TI, it's 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 about systems thinking. So it really is. I want to like reemphasize. Actually, it really is about understanding every individual thing. Like if you understand like systems thinking, that like TI is all about. That's the facet of it. It's like it's systems thinking. Like each thing that's running has its own system running underneath it. Like we can see the car as a car, but then when you look, that there's more going on in the hood. And then if you look even deeper past, like, like if you take out like the battery, then now there's even more going on in the battery. And then you go even deeper over there, like what's going on in this way. So TI is getting into all of that, like all of the nooks and crannies of whatever is working on over here. So just like, once again, like how FI is getting into all of the nooks and crannies of like, okay, it's not just sad, but there's like this and that, like all of the different like nuances of that. Like TI is like all about nuance. It's really getting into like, what is the nuance in our thoughts, in our opinions, in our reasonings, and the ways that we think. Um, yeah, systems thinking. If you can understand systems thinking, then you can understand TI. I might even like add that to my facet thing here, because thank you. That just helped out. I appreciate y'all's questions like this, because it's going to help me with when I start like teaching more of this, and you know start having like classes and stuff like that. So yeah, but all right. Hopefully this has been helpful for y'all. Be sure to leave any questions, comments, concerns underneath this video. Again, if you would like coaching, all the details will be in the description below. Be sure to check it out. If you want to know what type you are, or if you feel like you do know what type you are, but you want like a still detailed like professional profiling session, you can have recorded, and just to confirm like if you're this type and whatnot. Don't tell me what type that you think that you are in advance, or if you do, just know that I'm going to approach it as if we're still considering you to be any of the 16. But yeah, hit me up, email me at DEEZY, the number 2, blessed at iCloud.com. And that's where you'll be able to, just write down as a subject, profiling session. It's $100 per session. And after that, I'll be able to help you out. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in today. And I was about to say, until next time, stay sharp. That's me and Joyce's channel outro. For those of y'all who don't know, check it out. The Knife Show, NIFE show. All right. See y'all.